Hi, today's session is all about. I'd like to ask that how well are you aware of your students? Well, today's session is all about knowing your students really very well in the classroom. We may think that IQ is more important than EQ. We consider the students based upon the intelligent quotient rather than the emotional quotient. Whereas we forget that emotional quotient also it plays a very crucial role for understanding the students in a classroom. So we have so many students in the class, like some of them, they never speak at all. And some you may see that they are quite often, they joke in the classroom. And some of them, they answer to the question when they are prompted. And some students, they are so really good that even they stay after the school as well. So instead of just labeling them as very quiet, naughty, or kind of an average student, the teacher has to adopt some sort of a kind of a mapping where the teacher would be able to connect with the student deeply so that the scaffolding can be done in a proper way. So, welcome to my channel, and today's topic is all about using relationship mapping for scaffolding diverse learners. So, we are speaking about relationship mapping over here. So, this is not about based upon the intelligence of the students, where we speak about high level students or the middle level or the low level, but it is basically moreover it consists on more about the emotional quotient. So over here, how a teacher has to do some sort of a mapping in a classroom based upon the classroom wherever she's teaching it, so that she can develop that kind of a connection with the students whomsoever they're really very quiet, or they hardly they talk, right? They just some of the faces, they never wanted to come up to the teacher, and they hide from the teacher. You might have experienced that even in your classrooms as well, don't you? Yeah. So let's see how the relationship mapping with the students has to be done. So today's session is all about that. So I guess it will be really useful for you all, so just try it out. So when we're speaking about relationship mapping, how does it helps? So how does it helps is all about it. Relationship mapping is something which allows the teacher to evaluate their connection with the students to determine who needs more support. So it is all about, so why this relationship it's really very important is just because it loves to evaluate the connection more deeply with the students to determine, to understand that who are the student who needs more support. So moving ahead, it's backed by a solid research that a study in the Journal of Educational Psychology, which reveals that such a relationship significantly enhances student motivation and achievement and can change a student's lives forever. So when a teacher is actively doing some sort of a connection or a mapping, she understands the students really very well in a classroom. That would definitely it will help to enhance the student motivation and achievement, and at the same time it can change the student life as well. When we speak about the academic achievement, rather than that, we have some of the favorite teachers in the classroom, most of them, because they are really very cool, they talk to them, or we see, and some of them, they hardly they talk. All right, these are the students, it's really good if the teacher understands and she develops that kind of a connection with them, so it can change the students life as well. So when we're speaking about the relationship mapping, so how a relationship mapping has to be done in a classroom. So is it geographical or something? Because when we are speaking about the map and the relationship, it's something to do with the geography? Not at all. So it's all about, it's an interpersonal connections. So it's all about it. Relationship mapping is a visual representation of the bonds between you and your student. So it is all about the how the teacher maintains that sort of a relationship with the student, how she does that kind of a bond with the student, so that the students have a better understanding of the content whenever the teacher she's trying to teach something. Means like it will not have, the student will not some sort of a withdrawal from the class, like they have some sort of a fear of a subject or the fear of the teacher, something like that it would happen. But when the teacher is able to do this sort of a mapping, then definitely it will help you know to know the child better, so that the teacher can provide a very in a viewer way of the intervention. So when we're speaking about, it helps to deepen connection who need more engagement. Yes, when the teacher is doing a mapping, it will definitely help to focus on more engagement in learning. This tool is something which transforms abstract concept of student relationship into concrete, actionable insight, enabling you to craft a more connected and supportive learning environment. So definitely it will help to create that kind of an supportive learning environment when the teacher is having a proper mapping of a student, like whom she knows really very well. So let's move ahead. So step one, so this is really very important, and I want you all to take a note of it, because this is something when we are working on it, if you really wanted to adopt this even in your classrooms as well. So if you're just taking a note of it, definitely it will help you. I can just tell you that. So step one, so how exactly the mapping has to be done. So when we're speaking about it, get student roster for the various classes you teach. So you can try with just rather than, so most probably every teacher would be teaching at least like 3 to 4 lessons. So instead of that, you can try with one lesson, means one class, actually the whole class. It could be of 25 students or 20 students, or it could be 30 students in a class. So get a student roster and the class where you teach, either you are a subject teacher or you are a class teacher, you can have a student roster. So choose whether you wanted to map digitally or on paper with the 4 different color highlighters. So this is really very important. It's up to your choice. Either you wanted to map it, the mapping has to be done using your system digitally, where you have all the student names, where you map it with different color, or else in a student roster where all the student names are there, you can use different four the highlighters, because here when we are speaking about the mapping, there are 4 levels are there. So for 4 levels you ought to be using 4 different highlighters. So here it's up to you whether you're using it digitally or else you are using paper with 4 different colors. So the choice is yours how the mapping has to be done. So when we're speaking about step 2, that's the next step, to identify your interpersonal connection level with your student. So what has to be done? So this is what, for each name on the roster, assign one of the 4 different highlight colors. This is a very crucial step that, for example, 4 levels are there in a classroom. So for the 4 levels, for example, like level 1, level 2 and 3 and 4. So level 1, like I would be going for a blue color. Level 2 I'll be going for a red, and level 3 I'll be going for kind of in yellow, or a kind of, the other one I'll be going for a pink color. So it's up to you, whichever color you decide for every level, it's up to you. So you have to choose 4 different colors for mapping these students in the roster. And now this is really very important. So here we got to know what are those 4 levels. So for the mapping, it's really very understandable that we have level 1, we have level 2. Level 1 is distance acquaintance. So you can just see this clear here. Level 1 is a distance acquaintance. Level 2, you have transactional relationship, and level 3 is your personal connection, and level 4 is your deep relationship. So these all are the different levels as a teacher you would observe in your classroom. So basically, apart from your intelligent quotient that a student is based upon a gifted student or highly intelligent or a kind of a middle achiever or a kind of an low ability or a kind of an SOAD or ADHD. So different type of, rather than judging the student based upon the intelligent quotient, this is basically about the emotional quotient. So again, I repeat, you are mapping the student to create that kind of a connection, so that you can give some sort of an inclusive instruction. Okay, so this is level 1, level 2 and 3, 4. So just memorize these 4 levels, so it would really help you to do the mapping in your lessons. That is distance acquaintance, transactional relationship, personal connection, and your deep relationship. So these are the 4 level of students you will see in almost all the classes. All right, you need to check it out in your classes. So next morning when you go, you need to check that who are what. Okay, so when we are speaking about distant acquaintance, who are these type of students? Why do we call them distance acquaintance? Why? Because these students are the students whom you have or you had a kind of a minimal interaction in the classroom, and they may or may not interact during instruction, and you know little about the students. So basically, these type of students, basically they may sit at the back, otherwise they don't want to interact at all right, it could be they sit quietly. So these students, they quite often they sit quietly, often at the back benches. You see them, they prefer to sit at the back, hiding from everyone, rarely volunteer answers. They never speak. Even if the teacher is asking a question, they don't answer at all. Complete work but avoid interaction. So it's not that they avoid the work or something, they do the work but they don't want to talk with anyone. Are not disruptive yet remain invisible. So you cannot even say that they are bad in the manners and all, they're very disruptive in nature, but it's not like that. And they remain invisible because they don't want to be seen with anyone, there's no kind of an interaction, they just wanted to sit quietly. Maybe it could be the reason, it could be really very shy, or the really very anxious, or really very a kind of a new students are really unsure of belonging in the classroom. They don't want that, they may think that they may be not accepted in a classroom. So they themselves start labeling a kind of a stereotyping themselves. So that's the reason these group of students, we call them as distance acquaintance. Okay, then we go for the next level, that is level 2. So who are these level 2 students, group of students? They are the students who are mostly characterized by academic knowledge without any personal connection. Yes, you got to see them in every classroom. Okay, might answer questions, but you know no information about the student, no interaction in the classroom unless they are being prompted to answer. So when you just see them, that's very common in every classroom, that these students, they don't answer to any question, and they are like answers only when they are prompted, so you don't have any kind of a personal interaction, you don't know anything about these students. So that's the reason you say them or you map these students as transactional relations. So what are some of the characteristics of these kind of a group? So who are they actually? When we're speaking about it, they respond when asked, but they rarely initiate. Okay, focus on academics, task completion. So it's not about that they don't work on the studies and all, they're really very intelligent, but they focus only on the academics. They don't want to have that kind of an interaction with anyone or with the peer or with the teacher. right? They just wanted to do their work and then it's done. Maintain emotional distance, show compliances, not connection. So mostly they don't want to deeply connect with the teacher. It's just they wanted to do their kind of a work and they just wanted to go. Or often performance oriented rather than relationship oriented. So this particular term which we've seen over here, that is performance oriented rather than relationship oriented. So they give importance or to complete the work on time, completing the project, completing the homeworks on timely, but they're really not good at relationship with anyone, or especially with the teachers. So when we're speaking about the personal connection, the students are those with whom the teacher has moved beyond academic transition. So this group, when you can say that it's not about, rather than comparatively to the distant acquaintance and the transactional the group, this is a personal connection with the students whom the teacher has beyond the academic relationship. She maintains a very genuine, very respectful, and at the same time personal connection. So while still maintaining professional boundaries, the teacher acts as a facilitator and a guide. And over here, the student develops a strong academic identity and a confidence, because the teacher, the student over here, they may take the teacher as the role model, right? They may try to model them, they want to imitate them, and if at all anything, they try to share some of their personal things. This will come up freely, right? Asking some out of a question, I don't understand, could you just explain me? So you just find them these sort of a group student as well in your class. So what about them? So they're very comfort and very trusty, balanced in academic personal awareness. So they know how to balance their academic, at the same time they know how to have that kind of a personal awareness as well. Active engagement in all the tasks. Whenever the teacher gives any kind of an task in the classroom, they show that kind of an active involvement. They wanted to be that kind of a lead, they wanted to take mostly. And they are growth oriented relationship, and at the same time mutual respect connect lessons to real life. So these are the students who connect every content, that what is a reliability, they wanted to connect every lesson with the real life. So this is very important, that these kind of students, they seek more of the teacher's support and the teacher's counseling in most about the personal things. They may share about the interests, about their growth, which are the subjects and all. They like to discuss this with the teacher. So that's the reason we can group this L3 as the personal connection. So when you're going ahead with L4, that these are the group of the students who are really very cool, and you call them as the deep relationships. Yes. So deep relationship, that is L4 group students in a classroom, will openly share information and feel safe sharing their thoughts and opinions, and actively seeks your guidance and advice. So they are the students who openly share their personal thoughts, or it could be their experiences and opinions about their future plans, about some of their personal things, about what happened at home, about their friends and all. They really don't mind doing that with the teacher. They see guidance and mentorship proactively, and at times they wanted to seek the guidance and the counseling and mentorship from the teachers, because they trust the teachers so much. They wanted to have that sort of a level relationship with the teachers, engage deeply with learning, reflection, and self growth. Okay, so these are some of the levels. 4 levels are the 4 group of students. We see that in every classroom. One is a distance, the other one distance acquaintance, transactional, personal connection, and then you have the deep relationship. I guess you all are clear with that. So next time you get into your class, check it out, that whom you have these level of students, you need to use 4 colors to monitor in your roster, that who are the deep, who are the transactional student group, and whom you have really good personal connection, and whom you have the deep connection, 3 or 4 students who just highlight with the 4 different colors in a roster, or you can just do it digitally as well. So when we're speaking about the main tips which you need to remember here, the L1 and who are the student group who needs more support over here. So when we're speaking about the EQ over here, who needs more support? That is L1 and L2. So here the transactional, that is acquaintance, distant acquaintance, and the transactional group, they need more support over here. Recognize a strong connection to support the lower levels. Once lower level is done, list the student who need more support and try to build deeper connection relationship with them. Every quarter, repeat and ensure that every student has the opportunity for L3 and L4 relationship. So it's not that we are just bending it up, but basically the teacher has to give that sort of a support that L1 and L2 completely they trust the teacher, so they reach to L3 and L4 relationship, so that the teacher can do that sort of an intervention and scaffolding actively based upon the need, and the active learning can happen. So when we are speaking about three quick strategies how this mapping can be done, actually that two into some. So you may say that there are 25 students in a classroom, it's highly impossible to do the mapping. Yes, it is possible, but this is something you can just try it out. All right, so you can just check that 2 into 10, this is a one strategy. This approach involves spending just 2 minutes each day for 10 days. So 2 into 10 over here. So 2 into 10, that is 2 minutes each day for 10 days. Okay, for 10 days, 2 minutes for every student. Okay, so 10 so in a month you will be able to map the entire lesson, entire this L1. So you are targeting L1 and L2 over here. Okay, so 2 minutes each day for 10 days having a personal conversation with the student. So each day ask the student a question and build on what has been discovered and track on the roster. All right, so you can just map this thing, that what sort of you can ask a question and what have you discovered about the student, whether they are going some kind of an the teaching problem or a kind of a teaching difficulty. If they don't understand anything, what are their hobbies, what are their interests and all. So you can ask one question one day. So 2 minutes you can give for one student, 10 days, and that's enough. Okay, just try it out, this one. And the next one, providing strong peer mentors to build stronger relationship to mimic the emotions of those around them. So it's not about, so basically we say that L1 and L2 are basically they don't want to talk with anyone, they have their group, they wanted to just go away and all. So we can create that kind of a peer mentoring, means in the sense like L1 and L2 can be grouped up with L3 and L4. All right, so that the distance acquaintance and the transactional one or two students we can group up with L3, that is personal and deep. We can make them into a group so that they have that kind of an, then open up, they talk, they come up. Okay, so L1 and L2 with those from L3 and L4 can be through direct mentoring during instruction or by strategically using the seating chart. So it's very important that rather than in some of the countries and all, we just see that the students, they sit either in pairs, either in a row or otherwise in a group, right? So in my next lesson I will be focusing on cooperative learning, where you'll know how actually the grouping has to be done in a classroom. So you check it out for that. Okay, so then L1 and L2, so then you can group them, or you need to have an active seating plan where you should be knowing it, who is in L1 and L2 and then L3 and L4 in a group, right? So they can have that sort of an interaction and they open up. Give students a personalized space when students feel they can share and be valued for who they are. A simple way to do this, to provide a space for students to share accomplishment and information about themselves in the classroom. So most of the time, if they are sitting in a group, if L3 and L4 they are sharing, give them an opportunity to share their accomplishment, to share their interest. This is really very important to make them feel that even they are the part of the class, because they feel that there is a learning gap. So it is responsibility of the educator to erase this learning gap and make them feel that they are the part of the lesson, part of the classroom. And when we're speaking about, you know these four learning groups, I mean, say when we're speaking about these four mapping, we have done the mapping, yes, but what are some of the interventions that teacher has to adopt? That's very important. We have done the mapping, absolutely. It means for the distant, what sort of a learning has to be done, for transactional, what sort of a learning has to be done, and for personal connection, what sort of a learning, even for the deep connection, how and what sort of a teaching strategies a teacher has to adopt. So when we're speaking about the distinct acquaintance, what is a teaching style that works best for them? So this is really very important, and just take a note of it. Okay, so these are someone low pressure inclusive teaching. So rather than just giving them a pressure, you have to minimize the pressure, keeping a low pressure inclusive teaching. Ask whole class questions instead of direct cold calling, instead of just targeting that particular one student that you never speak at all. You'll be hiding somewhere. So rather than that, as a whole, you have to ask a question in general. Okay, use think, pair, share before open discussion. This is a very good technique. Think, pair, share. In case if you are doing it, it's fantastic. If you have not done it, then in my next video I'll be sharing you how to adopt think, pair, and share. Okay, so you can use this for the open discussion. Accept written responses instead of only oral answers. As we've seen, the deep acquaintance group of students are someone who really don't want it to be really very verbal. They don't want to talk because they're very shy, they're very anxious. So basically they wanted to do something, written part. So it's fine if they're not talking it, take the written responses, and that's absolutely fine. Clear lesson agenda on the board, rather than giving it these wanted instruction, because they are not really very attentive at times. So there should be a clear instructions on the board, or a whiteboard, or a kind of a PowerPoint if you're using it. Step by step explanation is really very important, or by the teacher, because sometimes some of the content, it could be a math, or it could be some of the subjects that are teaching it, if the instructions are not clear, then the student may not able to follow, because they are away from the class, distant, they might be following that, so that attachment isn't there. So that's the reason the clear step by step instruction has to be given by the teacher. Pair with supportive and non-dominant peer. This is really very important. If you are making the student sitting with L3 and L4, see that in a group no one is dominating the L1 and L2. If that is happening, then they may feel again distant, even they're not comfortable even sitting in the group as well. So keep groups very small, right? Rather than keeping a group of 6 or a group of 7 or something, keep a group of only 4. That works really very well. Check it out. Plan choice-based activities. So rather than giving one activity for the whole class, work choice-based tasks. So this is will be my another video which exclusively I'll be focusing on what exactly are the choice board tasks, and how it has to be planned, and how exactly it has to be done. So the other video will be on that, so you need to wait for that. So plan choice based activities, that's more about the content. And then, so based on it, what exactly you have to avoid when you're speaking about the distance acquaintance group student, when you're speaking about it. So what is that you have to avoid? Avoid cold calling rather than labeling them. Cold calling is something like you label them, you really, all the time that you sit at the back and all. So don't do that. All right. Public correction or criticism, please avoid that. Forcing group leadership. All right. How well are you doing it? Public correction or criticism, forcing group leadership. When we're speaking about leadership, so basically they are distant and I really don't want to be like taking the charge of the whole class and all or anything. They really don't want to be that. So don't force the student to be a leadership, this thing and all. So don't do that. Labeling as really very quiet or a weak, right? This is really very bad. Being judgmental about them, like telling them, labeling them, you're really very quiet, you never talk, you're really very weak and all. So just don't do that. All right. So these are some of the things you need to check it out while you are working with the after the mapping is done, when you are doing it for the distant acquaintance. So you need to be really very careful and avoiding these things. Okay, and the next one is transactional relationships. So basically, what are some of the strategies we can adopt for the transactional relationships? So let's check it out. Teaching strategies is something you can focus on open-ended academic questions here. So rather than asking like, if you are in a position, what would you do? Scaffolding based question, like it could be based upon factual, analytical, or evaluative. And it could be a participation pedagogy to engage them, or opt-in participation or academic identity roles, voluntary sharing opportunities, feedback focused assessment. So these are some of the transactional relationship strategies you can follow, that more about like what kind of an, basically you don't say that they are really very distant or else they are very personal or deep. They are in the middle. All right, these are the students, they answer only when they are prompted by the teacher. All right, until and unless they are quiet, they are academically focused. Don't take them as a weak, but only as a teacher you need to identify this really important, because they know the answer, they wanted to talk, but only the teacher should be able to give that sort of an opportunity to speak, to provide, to create that kind of a learning environment so that the student can talk over here. Okay, so these are some of the relationship, these are some of the strategies teacher can adopt while you involve this transactional mapping student in a classroom. So what is that? That few things you can avoid doing them, right? Forcing personal connections. They really don't want it to be personal with the teacher. So you cannot force them. Okay, fine. You just tell me about yourself, or how is it? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? So you don't have to force that. Interpreting quietness as disengagement. So most of the time we all have a notion that it's just because they are really very quiet, we feel that they are not engaged in any sort of a learning task and all, but it's actually not like that. Okay, overpraising minimal effort, right? So even if they are not doing even a small effort, they're doing it, but you overpraising it, that is also you need to avoid it. Where sudden emotional questioning, so this is another important thing that you have to avoid, because every student have their own story. We just cannot judge them in a classroom because they are in a class, so we cannot just judge them based upon their quietness, their distance or something. We cannot do that. So it's very important that how well you understand this particular group of students in your classroom. So we'll move ahead with the next level, that is level 3. They are personal connections. Yes, personal connections are, what are these, like what are some of the teaching strategies the teacher has to adopt over here? These are very important, because either that they are really very, very deep, or otherwise a distance or something. These are another kind of a group of a student who has a personal connection, but again they have certain limitations. So instructional pedagogy by the teacher, she can adopt. The content is delivered to deepen engagement learning. Engagement pedagogy, that how students actively they participate. Okay, assessment pedagogy, the teacher can adopt, like how the learning is evaluated after a particular task is given to a student, that how that particular learning is evaluated, what kind of an assessment we are doing it to know how the learning has happened with that particular child. Relationship building pedagogy is another method, that is how a teacher fosters trust and connection with that particular child. And classroom environment encourage open dialogue and safe risk taking. So basically these are the students, they are more about goal oriented, they wanted to know more about like their interest and all, they share some of the ideas and all, but they are very very productive. So it is the responsibility of the educator that how safely she is attending this particular student in a class. So what are some of the things that a teacher can avoid while dealing with these kind of a student that is asking overly personal question unrelated to learning, sometimes in a flow that is just because really very personal, right? Avoid doing that, asking something unrelated question which is not related to the topic. So avoid that, where favoritism or comparison and publicly comparing L3 students to the others, where publicizedly we try to compare them, where that see how they are doing it, we try to compare L3 student with L1 and L2 students, that is level 1 distance and the transaction we try to compare. Stop doing that. Skipping challenging tasks because the student is well behaved. So sometimes favoritism, another thing, it plays a very crucial role, where because the child is well behaved, then the challenging questions the teacher avoids. So stop doing that. So overpraising or giving generic praise or rewarding participation without efforts or thought. So sometimes overpraising it or a giving kind of a praise or a kind of a rewarding even without any kind of an effort or a thought, because the teacher is favoritizing it or she's really very biased because she has some sort of a personal connection with a particular student. Inconsistency or breaking routines or some sort of an expectations. So inconsistency, all right, when that kind of a learning is not seen, so stop doing that. How it should not be really very biased, there should be no favoritism, so it has to maintain that kind of a consistently in learning, that how you are treating with the others as well. Emotional overload, expecting the student to support or mentor peer beyond their capacity. Instead of that, now we have just spoke about that a student L1 and L2 can be grouped with L3 and L4, but sometimes what happens over here for these overloading, they don't want to do it, they don't want to support L1 and L2 and other one, so this could be really very overloading. So you need to make them understand that their help can really, really it could be an encouragement for the others. So sometimes overloading, support to mentor peer, it is beyond their capacity, so you have to really very balanced in doing that as well. Right now we are going for teaching tips for the deep connection. So what are these deep connections? So you can start. So what are some of these strategies when we are speaking about the deep connection? What are some of the strategies the teacher has to adopt for the deep connection? So start every interaction with empathy and active listening. So it's really very important. It's just because now the teacher has a deep connection with that particular student or some of the students in a classroom. So you can start with some sort of an empathy and always an active learning. Okay. Use one-to-one coaching session to address academic, or it could be the personal concerns as well. So rather than making them speaking some sort of a thing in the entire classroom, it's better that the teacher call and have that one-to-one connection, and she gives some sort of a personal concerns or a kind of an academic concern this particular type of a student. So it's not about these particular, the students are really very good in academics, Okay, whereas comparatively to level 1 and level 2, they are really good academic. But when it comes to L3 and L4 students, we cannot judge their intelligence that they're really excellent in academics. So they may be really personal with the teacher to be having that kind of an favoritism, but they may be really not good. So the teacher, she has to adopt completely, the learning and engagement has to be really very active over here, though she knows the student really very well, but over here the engagement of an active learning has to be given by the teacher. So encourage student-led discussion and project, collaborative project that require planning and shared responsibility. So collaborative project is just because they're very personal, it doesn't mean that whatever projects you're giving it, it has to be a collaborative project which requires planning and a kind of a shared responsibility in a group. Learning strategies and emotional responses. Encourage goal setting and tracking progress. So all the time these students are sometimes so personal, they are not really very particular about the goals and all, what has to be done in the future and all. So basically it's a responsibility of the educator that you set a goal for them, and there should be a goal oriented learning. At the same time, tracking the progress, right? For example, in the first assessment, what are their scores? In the second assessment, what is the score? In the third, so it should be on continuous, learning assessment rather than a summative assessment. It should be a formative assessment. Okay, with teachers and feedback, regular checkings beyond academic, right? It becomes really very important rather than just giving some kind of an weekly or a monthly or calling them during the this thing. So there should be a regular checkup with these kind of a students, because they may go off track. They think that they're really very good they're really very good with the teachers and all, the teacher may listen to them, so that's the reason they may go out of the track. So it's a responsibility of the educators that how well are you maintaining the balance with these students, because they are the students teachers favorite as well, right? So what are some of the things we need to avoid to create that kind of a balance with L1, L2 and L3? So avoid judgment, labels or moralizing it, first one. So avoid breaking confidentiality. So rather than, if you know a child very well about the family history and all, so you shouldn't be talking about the child in front of everyone that, oh, you are this, you're very superb, you're doing that. So you don't have to do that. Okay. And avoid power misuse or emotional control. It's just because you're your teacher and you know the child very well, so sometimes we try to take our control on that particular child. So stop doing that, and don't have to do that. And then avoid public correction or avoid over attachment or blurred boundaries. Avoid public correction of personal views, and avoid giving ready-made solution immediately. If you have to answer something, you don't have to give it just like that. Okay, you can give because they wanted a long term, the responses, so keep it. All right, to think about it and say, all right, fine, I'll let you know after some time. And then avoid inconsistency or favoritism. This is more important. Avoid minimizing emotions with logic too early. Next one, golden rule of level 4, that is never use a student's openness as leverage, evidence or a control. So these are some of the teaching strategies that a teacher has to adopt while dealing with the level 4, that is a deep connection group of students. Okay, so when we are speaking about the result, okay, so let me just revise it one more time. So we have the 4 levels. We are not speaking about the IQ of the students over here. We are speaking about the EQ over here, that is the emotional quotient. So we are mapping the students based upon the emotional quotient, so that the teacher can scaffold the student based upon the interest, based upon the personal interaction or a personal bond with the student. Because if the teacher knows the student really very well, then the teacher can adopt a particular teaching strategy. she can know well, she would be able to give some kind of a guidance or kind of a support to that particular child. Until unless you do not know that particular child, you may never be able to give your 100%. So that's the reason student mapping is really very important in every classrooms you teach. Okay, so that's the reason, start doing it. So what is the result when we are doing a student mapping? What does it happen? What is an effect of it? So relationship mapping is more than just a tool. It's a strategic approach to ensuring every student can have a solid relationship with the teacher, and at the same time the teacher can scaffold so that they can develop to their full potential to become independent learner. So you might have seen in my previous videos and all, I have done the scaffolding where for a certain time the teacher gives support to the student, where the student becomes an independent learner. So basically the over here the student mapping is something which leads to this scaffolding. So the result would be every student can have a solid relationship with the educator, with the teacher, and it can help the teacher to scaffold and to give that sort of an intervention. Then the student can become an independent learner at the end. So takeaway from this today's topic is all about scaffolding facilitate learner interaction and collaboration with others who can provide support, feedback, or challenge. All of these strategies help support diverse learner in different situations in an inclusive classroom. So when we're speaking about it, this mapping and all, it's really very useful as an educator. I have done a lot of research in so many ways and all, and then I have got this for you people, you know, because as an educator, it's really very important for us to understand the child, right? If we understand a child where he or she is standing, all right, then we will be able to give some sort of a support. So that is what all about today's session is all about. If you really like it, if you really think that is really helpful for your lessons, do like it and do share it, and please just ping in for the more modern teaching pedagogy, where you can explore that how the teacher resources, you can just take it from here and you can apply in your classrooms, in everyday classroom. There are so many other sessions I'm working on it. It could be my next session would be on the best teaching practices and all. So it's not about every countries has their own, you know, the way of teaching and all. They adopt many teaching strategies and all, but this is something universal which we can adopt. So I think if you think if it's really very useful, then please then like, subscribe, and share. Thank you. Take care. Bye and happy learning.